Once again, welcome everyone. And I'm going to do a brief comment about what is our goal here, because I see different names. We are trying to have a very simple study where people feel comfortable to make questions, to contribute. This is not a lecture. That's not our intention. This is really a study. And we'll go very slowly through the Medium's book. And if you have to go only in one sentence and that will last the whole encounter, so be it. We are not in a rush. We are here to improve what we don't know, share the little we know, and please feel free to make comments related to the subject, to make questions related to the subject, and you are all welcome. So right now I'm going to start to sharing with you my screen with the book, so we can all have the same. Earlier today, I have shared the Medium's book through the chat of the group, but you can always find a link of the book through our SSL homepage. I think there's a link over there. So last week, we stopped where it's highlighted. So I'll start to read the sentence and we carry on, okay? We're still going through the introduction of the book, right? A lot of people decide normally to go straight to the content of the book, but we understand that introduction is also very important sometimes and brings knowledge. And I guess I was right, because the last encounter we had, we went up to the 1/3 of the introduction. So that's a good example, like how the introduction brings us knowledge as well. Alongside mediums per se, the numbers of individuals who are concerning themselves with the spirit's manifestations is increasing every day. To guide them in their observations, to point out the difficulties they could and certainly will meet in dealing with a new order of things, to initiate them into the manner of communicating with the spirits, to indicate the means for receiving good communications. Such is the scope we must embrace. Let's our endeavor be incomplete. To those that are not familiar with this book, or what is the goal of the book, Kardec brought to us a compiled level of information of how safe, or how can we deal with the spirit world safely, how we can deal with mediumship safely. So through this book, we'll have the opportunity to understand the mechanism, how it works, why we should do, what we should not do. And that is very important, because when we try to initiate something and we don't have the required knowledge of how to do it safely, that can be a problem. I'm pretty sure, I think I even gave you that example last weekend. When your car is broken, you don't take your car to any mechanic. You try to take your car to a decent garage where you know they will be able to fix your car properly. Here's the same. This book gives us knowledge to minimize the potential risks of mediumship. Is this the only book from Kardec? Definitely not. This book is particularly dedicated to mediumship, to mediums. And to understand the whole knowledge that Kardec brought to us, we also have to go to other books like Spirit's book, the Gospel, Genesis. But the goal of this study is the Medium's book, and eventually we'll be tying few things between Medium's book and the other books. So that's what this book is about. Thus, it should not seem surprising to encounter teachings in this work that at the first may appear irrelevant. Experience will prove than to be useful. Quite often, we think we know everything, right? That's in the human nature. Oh, I'm a spiritist for X amount of years. I know everything. I don't think so. No one knows everything. And when we start to really study the matter, we see that little things can make a difference. Can make a difference in our lives as mediums, can make a difference in our mediumship meetings, and can make a difference when we try to help other people. Because having knowledge is one thing. Know how to use is a different thing. So we need to make both work together. And there is no other way to understand how to make that connection other than study. So that's our proposal here. After studying this book very carefully, these individuals will better understand the incidents they are sure to witness. And the language of certain spirits will then seem less strange. My practice says that most of the people that join this type of study is because they feel something and they don't know how to explain what they feel. A minority is due to curiosity. So I'm led to believe that most of the people that are here feel something, are scared of something, do not understand what they are feeling or the loved ones are feeling, and then they felt the urge to start looking for the information. Today, internet is a very powerful tool. There's a lot of information on the internet, a lot of good things, but there's also a lot of misleading information on the internet. And when it is the same thing, you go to a doctor, you make an A exam, you got the reports from the lab, you open, you start reading. If you go on the internet, you feel you'll die tomorrow because there's so many bad things about things we don't understand that our own conclusion may not be the right one. Mediumship can be very strange at the beginning. A lot of people think that I'm losing my plot. It's not possible. It does not exist. But on the other hand, I could not find information anywhere. The doctor that I visited was not able to tell me what's going on. The doctor I visited was not able to fix me. And then I started to try to find information elsewhere. This is a good start. Let me continue then. Munir, please feel free to jump anytime, okay?
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure if Charles is there already because I don't see people on the room anymore.
Yes,
I'm just seeing the book. So welcome everyone, and please feel free to jump any moment.
Okay, Charles is there as well. What I'd like to say is that Kardec is warning us that we are entering into contact, and at that time was very common and very frequent, especially on the material level of interaction with the spirits, the material manifestation of the spirits. And the warning is we are establishing communication with a new world, although they are the spirits of the deceased. It is a different world, it works in a different way, and we have to know exactly how to interact, exchange information, establish contact with them. This is natural. If we go to a different place we've never been before, we go into the jungle, we have to learn about the jungle, how do things there, what to do, what not to do, and he's giving that piece of advice to everyone because he said, well, it is interesting for everyone to know about the spiritual world. And although some mediums with a very clear sign, but not everyone, but it is important to know we're dealing with spirits and the spiritual world and understand the way things work there. he got all the information, he compiled that. And so he's presenting to us and saying, look, if we want to establish contact with this world, we have to understand the rules, as it were, the dangers, and so on. So it's very important, this piece of advice.
We need to set something that sounds strange for people that just join that type of study. Mediumship is natural. It's very natural. It's not something that you should be scared of. To give an idea, I'm born in a spiritist family. My first more straight contact with the spirits, I was 15 years old. And it's very natural, it's very normal if your environment consider that as normal. I have my kids now. He had contact as well when he started to speak with the spirits. He started to have contact with them, and if we see that as a natural, yeah, maybe it's scary in the first moment, but then as you know, it's nothing from the other world. You get used to it. You start to understand the mechanism. You start to feel comfortable with, and why I'm saying that is because I don't know everyone's background here, and I believe some of people may be concerned about what she or he is hearing or seeing and things like that. So this is natural. You just need to get used to it and to understand how it works. Okay, and we are here to help if we may. Let me continue that. Since it contains practical instructions, let me stop here. This book will bring practical instructions. How can we say that something is practical and we can create an instruction of our practice? Because it's have been tried over and over and over. It's not like something that came out of the blue. It's just an idea and put in the book. No, this is a result of lots of experimentations, a lot of practice, a lot of years, until he was able to come to us with something like, this is a safer way to go. This path may not be that safe. And if any one of you decide in the future, yeah, we want to go on that avenue, we want to have a mediumship meeting or whatever, this would be the best guidance you may have. This book will minimize your efforts to make it right, because it's a massive amount of knowledge brought to us, not only by Kardec, but from the spirits themselves, telling us this is safe to do, this is not safe to do. And you see through this book the incentive we receive to study, to do better, to help others. So if any moment in time you decide to go on the avenue, please refer to this book. This is the safest I've seen so far. There are a lot of other books bringing information, but not the way Kardec brought to us. In my opinion, this is by far the safest method to start a mediumship or start to understand your mediumship. It is not aimed exclusively at mediums, but harder to all who wish to observe spirit phenomena. Quite often, people that start to participate in this type of study, it's not because they feel anything themselves, but they have a husband, they have a son, they have a nephew, they are having problems, and for some reason, no one could help. And then we feel the need to do something we never considered before. Because a lot of people that comes to Spiritism, they do not consider at first reincarnation. They do not consider there are spirits. That thing is a ghost thing. It's not possible. But here Kardec says to us, this is not only to mediums, but to everyone. Some would have had us publish a more succinct practical manual indicating in a few words the techniques to follow in order to communicate with the spirits. Actually, I believe he did. And few times later, he evolved that compendium to the Medium's Book. And we are in a hurry, especially nowadays where everything is fast, internet, WhatsApp, Facebook. No one wants to spend time with anything. We want things now. But if we start to do something on hurry without having a proper background, a proper level of information, most probably we're going to be making the same mistakes as other people did in the past. So it is recommended not to jump any step, but to pay attention on everything that other people did before us to help us going through. These persons believe that due to its low cost, a book of this nature could be more profusely disseminated and would therefore be a powerful means of advertisement, which would then result in an increase of the number of mediums. Let me ask something. I have something in my mind here that Charles, Kardec, he had a small compendium about mediumship, isn't it?
He had a small, sorry?
A small book about mediumship.
Ah, yes. Practical instructions for spiritist manifestations. So he published it in 1858, 3 years before the Medium's Book. And he came to the conclusion that it's too much and not enough. I think he talks about it a little bit further in the introduction. So that's why he decided not to publish it anymore and to replace it by the Medium's Book.
Do you believe that a book, the first one or the Medium's Book, would increase the number of mediums? I don't think so, isn't it? Why not? Because we all are mediums. The difference is the level of sensibility we have. And it's not because we're going to read a book that we will become mediums or not. We are what we are. Likewise, if I'm medium, I have the free will to decide if I want to use my mediumship or not. But I will remain medium because it's natural. It's a physical thing. I may decide not to use, I may decide to ignore what I hear, what I see, but I remain a medium. However, we think that such a work might do more harm than good, at least for the time being. Spiritist practice is surrounded by many difficulties, and it is not always exempt from problems, which only a serious and thorough study can prevent. I even highlight this part here. I've heard over the years that I know enough, I study enough, and this is a very common mistake. Especially to those that decide to pursue mediumship, study is a must. It's not a must just in the beginning. It's a must until the last day of our lives, because we always learn something else. And mediumship evolves. Our environment evolves. So to follow those changes, we need to study more. Oh, I studied the book once. I'm sorry, but that's not enough. I don't remember anymore how many times I had to study the mediumship book, the Medium's Book. And I'm still finding things I didn't I couldn't find before because of my maturity. I was very immature the first time I read this book. Pay attention to what I said. I read this book. Because read a book doesn't mean you studying a book. Studying a book is more complex. You have to do it slowly. And quite often, if you study by yourself, you miss things. That's the beauty of having a study like this one. We can share experiences. We can gather together more information from the same book. All right? So, but here Kardec says, serious and thorough study can prevent problems. It is highly recommended that if we decide to go on that avenue, to pursue a very serious study. Thus, once again, if anyone wants to open the mic, questions, jump in, make comments, please feel free to do so. Thus, we fear that a succinct exposition might facilitate frivolous experiences, and this would only lead to regret. What he means with the frivolous experiences? When I was reading this here, something came to my mind straight away. A couple of years back, I was in Paris and I decided to buy on Amazon what we call Ouija. It's a table with letters where, in theory, the spirits were going to be moving from letter A to B to C until elaborate a sentence. I also saw, I think it was in the UK, a game where people would buy that and you have a glass and you start asking the glass of water for some answers. And they are selling this as a game, as a toy. But behind that kind of thing, there is an intelligent mechanism. And that was what Kardec observed initially. What I would recommend is that anyone that decides to practice what is in the Spiritism need first to define what is the goal, what is the objective. Because dealing with mediumship, dealing with the spirits, if we're not prepared, may become frivolous, as he said here. And the goal of Spiritism, everything that Kardec brought to us, has an objective. Objective to help people. Objective to do charity. Objective to do good. Not making that a living. Not harming anyone. This is not a joke. It's not just a matter of curiosity. I want to ask questions. Should I buy a car? Should I go to university? Am I going to the right direction or something like that? No. If we want to start that adventure, we need to know that to be safe, we need to have a clear objectives, because this is the only thing that will ensure, if I can say like that we'll have our benefactors supporting us. When we are kids, we see a lot of things, even on the TV, like do this, do that, you know, and sometimes we try. But remember, behind that, there's always a mechanism. And we need to be careful not to mislead ourselves and others the way we try to use it.
Guilherme, if I may say, at Kardec's time, the manifestations were taking place everywhere. And they were sort of entertainment. People would gather. There was no cinema, no TV, no radio, nothing. So people would gather just to have fun. And I think he also refers to that, you know, it's a way of entertaining people, the spirit manifestation and so on. And most people didn't want to go into in depth, and know exactly what it meant. Kardec had this different view. He was invited to one of these frivolous gathering, and then he realized there was more to that than just fun, just entertainment. And that's why he said, well, maybe this will encourage people to increase the number of gatherings to have fun with the spirit manifestation.
Very true, very true.
And translating to, to the present, we could say that, well, people would, be encouraged to do it just to know if they're going to get married, going to earn a lot of money, if they're going to, do all sorts of material, succeed in all sorts of material work they do or whatever.
Mm-hmm. These are matters that are neither appropriate nor prudent to be toyed with. And we believe that we would be doing a disservice to place them within reach of the first person frivolous enough to think it would be entertaining to talk to the dead. Instead, we will address ourselves to those who see a serious purpose in Spiritism, who understand its great importance, and who do not intend to make communicating with the invisible world a mere pastime. Well, we as a human beings, we are naturally very curious. And over the years, I've seen so many people trying to make questions that if we have stopped and think properly, we would know the answers. Things that we would not need to interrogate the spiritist world to have an answer. Communicating with the spirits needs to have a goal. It's not just for having a laugh. It's not just to having a frivolous conversation. A lot of people do. But as he says, he is not recommended. It's not recommended. And how do I know that the answer that I'm getting is correct? How do I know I can trust that information? Through the continuation of this study, we hopefully will give you some guidelines how to interpret it, how to recognize the level of information we may be receiving. Okay. We had already published a manual, practical instruction manual to guide mediums, but it is now out of print. Although we printed it with an eminently serious and grave objective in mind, we will not reprint it since we did not find it complete enough to clear up all the difficulties that may be encountered. Therefore, we have replaced it with this work, in which we have gathered together all the data that extensive experience and conscious study have enabled us to acquire. We hope that it will contribute towards showing the essentially serious character of Spiritism, and also towards dissipating the idea of frivolousness and entertainment. So here he's very clear. Spiritism is serious. What we do here is not for entertainment or anything else. But what we're doing here is prepare ourselves to be a more conscious and be a better tool to help other people. We will add one more important consideration. Meetings where experiments are performed lightly and without full knowledge of the facts arouse very bad impressions in novices and well-disposed individuals. Cause the problems of conveying a very wrong idea about the world of spirits, thereby encouraging ridicule, and providing well-founded grounds for criticism. That is why disbelievers rarely leave such a meetings convinced, and why they are little disposed to recognize the serious side of Spiritism. The ignorance and frivolousness of certain mediums has caused greater harm to the opinion of many people than one might think. We spoke briefly here today that how serious it is to engage ourselves into the Spiritism mediumship side of things. If we are not organized enough, if we are not serious enough, if we don't have the enough knowledge to start a meeting, don't do it. It's not recommended. Can be risky, can bring problems to the mediums. Another way of doing a disservice to the Spiritism is because people will think that's a joke, because of the results you may have, because of the way you do. So if you do consider in the future to have or to participate in a mediumship meeting, it's highly recommended that you study first to understand the mechanism of a safe meeting, or even to allow you to identify if the meeting that you join is really what's supposed to be or not. Otherwise, everything you hear and see becomes true because you don't know better. So hopefully, in the end of this study, we'll be able to have a more thorough understanding of how it works or how it should work. And then you'll be able to think about the next step. Spiritism has made great progress in only a few years, but its greatest step occurred when it is entered the field of philosophy, because since then it has been appreciated by enlightened persons. Nowadays, it is no longer mere entertainment, but rather a doctrine that those who used it to ridicule table turning no longer find amusing. There are two things here that I would like to mention. Spiritism is not to people that are only PhD and above. But we have to understand that at that time of Kardec, not many people had access to culture, to studies. And that was supernatural to those that had that kind of access to identify themselves with what has been brought by Kardec. Nowadays, we have people from all different levels of education, all different kind of understanding, I can say that, trying to study Spiritism. So this is just to make sure that no one feels like, oh dear, I'm not a PhD like, so I cannot study. No, that's not what he's saying. Spiritism is open to everyone. And another thing is the turntable. Turntable was one of those frivolous things that he mentioned before that got his attention. He thought there was an intelligent principle behind that. And thanks to that, his attention was driven to bring this marvelous amount of knowledge we have today. Through our endeavors to bring it along and sustain it in such a terrain, we are certain to win more dedicated adherents than through a large number of manifestations that might be open to abuse. We see evidence of this every day in the numbers of such adherents who have resulted from simply reading this Spirit's book. A lot of people come to the Spiritism after read the Spirit's book. we're not going to be talking about the Spirit's book here in depth, but it's fair to say that if you don't find answers for every day-to-day philosophical question you may have, we may have the majority of them answered in this book. So it's always good to refer to this book because it is the base that will allow us to have a better understanding of everything we do in the Spiritism. After have set forth the philosophical aspect of the Spiritist science in the Spiritist book, we offer in this book its practical aspects to those who wish to concern themselves with manifestations. He mentioned to us here, Spiritist science. Behind mediumship, there is a science. What is a science? Science of observation, to understand how it works, what can be done. Is the Spiritism also science? Yes, it is. I would recommend us to keep our mind open, and as we go along, we will be able to identify things on the Spiritism that are pretty much related to science. They will see herein the obstacles that they may encounter, and they will thus have the means to avoid them. This is very important. Means to avoid. If we do a serious study about this particular book, we'll create tools that we can use to protect us and our loved ones. So it is important to keep that in mind. Although this one follows the other, these two books are, to a certain point, independent of each other. But to whomever wishes to seriously delve into this subject, we recommend the Spirit's book to be read first, because it contains fundamental principles without which it may be difficult to understand some parts of this work. Having said that, if you have the opportunity to at least read the Spirit's book, that will be positive to you to better understand things we're going to be talking here, okay? This study is specific for the Medium's book, but we would like to encourage you all, if you have an opportunity, to at least read the Spirit's book. It will make you understand easier. The second edition has been much improved over the first. It has been corrected very carefully by the Spirits. So that means there was not Kardec who was writing the book. Does it mean that the Spirits, they review the book before have been delivered to the public? Yes. Kardec, he worked directly with the Spirits. And when he said they were carefully corrected, means that through the process, the Spirits who brought that knowledge through Kardec, they identified the need to adjust some of the words, some of the sentences, to better protect us and to bring us knowledge that would ensure that we would do mediumship safely. Who have added a large number of observations and instructions of utmost interest. Since it was they who revised the entire work, approving or modifying it as they saw fit, we can state that for the most part of it is their work, since their contribution was not only limited to the segments actually signed by them. Let me just do something here because my WhatsApp, I forgot to switch off my WhatsApp. Just clicking here. Sorry for that. However, we have only indicate their names when it seems necessary to characterize some of the more extensive exposition that proceeded from them textually. Otherwise, we would have had to mention their names on almost every page, particularly in their response given to our questions, a procedure that did not seem worthwhile to us. It is well known that names are of little importance in such matters. And some of you may be asking, well, why we don't need to pay particular attention on the name of who is writing something? Well, in this case, it was concerned about the knowledge, the level of information, the quality of information. He was not giving 100% of the importance to the name, but he was giving 100% importance of the level of information received. And hopefully, through this study, we will create in ourselves that kind of mindset that will allow us to identify through the communication if the communication is positive or not, if we can rely or not. So eventually, we all will be able to better identify the spirits, not by their name, but by the way it's written, by the level of information that is brought by them. I'll tell you a story here one time. I like one particular spirit, and I was reading, I had all the books that came from this spirit, and I bought one book, The A Medium, where was pointed him as the spirit who was dictating the book. I could not identify at all the spirit to the book, the way it was written, the type of message that was written. I could not. I said, well, he's changing a lot, right? It's like you get a book from an author and you can compare with another. There's different way of writing. There are different level of information. And I had the opportunity to ask in one mediumship meeting if that book was really from him. And his answer was very clear. Check the fruit and you recognize the tree. He never said it was him or not, but he basically told me, think, you know better. So that book was not his. But for some reason, it was signed by someone as his book. So that kind of perception, on the end of this study, I hope you all will have a better one. You'll be able to recognize that those little things that will make a difference. The reception given to the first edition, imperfect though, that edition was, give us hope that the present one will be no less welcomed. We have to remember that at that time, when that level of information came, there was a lot of different perceptions, different religions, different way of seeing things. So it was not easy to bring that knowledge first. Even though we have added much material, including many entire chapters, we have also eliminated a few repetitious segments, such as the Spirit's hierarchy, which may already be found in the Spirit's book. Furthermore, we have omitted from the glossary whatever did not properly fit the scope of this work. We have appropriately replaced it with something more practical. Moreover, this glossary is not complete. We intend to publish one later in separately as a small dictionary of Spirit's philosophy. In this edition, however, we have preserved only new specific words that are related to the subject at hand. Kardec, Paris, 1861. So that was introduction. So I think now we have a better idea of what we will have in the future, or what we should expect from this study. Anyone want to ask anything before we move on? What time is it? Still 10 minutes. Anyone would like to make a comment? Everyone's so quiet. Okay.
Yeah, I do have a question. Sorry, Maria. I'm just wondering, because you spoke about level of sensibilities, no? That everyone is a medium, but some people have more or less sensibility. And is this something that can be further developed?
It depends who you ask, right? I will refrain to the practice side of things. If you study seriously the matter, if you start to practice mediumship in a serious environment, it is very possible that if today you only feel the urge to write, eventually you start to talk as well. That means psychophony or psychography. Does it mean that it is evolving? In my understanding, no. The characteristics is already with you, but you don't know how to use yet. So as you exercise a type of mediumship in the future, you open different channels that will allow you to better understand and better use other characteristics that you also have, but you don't know yet. Can someone buying a book with little sensitivity develop that into mediumship if they are not mediums? I don't think so. I don't think so. You can develop what you have, but you cannot create something from nothing. What do you think, Charles?
Fully agree with his statement. But again, as Kardec wrote in this introduction, the aim is for people who are medium and also for people who are not so ostensive medium, let's say so. So it is really directed to both. Now, of course, intuition, inspiration is the way that everyone is medium. And even so, for when you hear some inspiration or some intuition, it's important to have this basis of the medium book, which will teach us to discern what is good from what is not good, from what is, I would say, trustworthy from what is not trustworthy. And at the beginning, Kardec was more focusing on the mediumship itself, because we can see the spirits. They don't come with a pass or ID card or whatever to identify themselves. So you are never sure about which spirit is inspiring you at a given point in time. But strangely today, it's even more true, even outside mediumship, because all what you see published on internet, on social media, wherever, how do you have to exercise to use this same discernment in order to make the differences between what makes sense and what does not make sense. Otherwise, one get lost. So on these both aspects, this book is extremely important. And for the people who have suffering some spontaneous phenomenon, the book also helps to understand what type of mediumship it is, why this type of things happen, what to do when there are not so good spirits coming closer, and what to do to attract the good ones. So it's really a tool for every person and every situation.
Thanks.